Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Crisanti, and I'm with the Illinois Restaurant Association. I'd like to thank you for joining today's webinar, Accessing the Funding, Permits, and Licensing You Need. Today, we'll learn the hows and whys of accessing capital and obtaining permits and licensing for your restaurant. There will also be a Q&A at the end to get your questions answered. Today's webinar is being broadcast in English, Spanish, and Mandarin Chinese. To listen in Spanish or Chinese, please use the interpretation button in your toolbar. This webinar is being presented by the Illinois Restaurant Association in conjunction with the Cook County Small Business Source. Established to ensure businesses emerge from COVID-19 intact and positioned for growth, the Small Business Source connects small business owners with expert guidance and support. Services include no-cost business advising, resources, and events that connect small business owners with a community of advisors and each other. For one-on-one business advising, sign up at cookcountysmallbiz.org. It's free and signing up is easy. The Small Business Source will then connect you with an expert from their network, including us here at the Illinois Restaurant Association. All of their contact info will be included in the follow-up email you'll receive after this webinar. Also, before we begin, I'd like everyone attending to know that the Illinois Restaurant Association remains a resource to you as the hospitality industry continues efforts to recover. Our staff is focused on providing guidance, assistance, and relief to restaurants, bars, caterers, event venues, and other hospitality businesses in Illinois as we all work to emerge and operate fully again. We're sending regular email updates to thousands of operators around the state with what you need to know for your business. You can sign up for those on our website. We also have a host of different resources and vendors that can assist you. Info about any current mandates, a pro bono legal network, and much more on our website. Now, for today's webinar, you can use the Q&A button in your toolbar to post your questions at any time during the presentation. Or if you see another attendee has asked a question that you like, you can hit the thumbs up icon next to that question so we can see which are most popular. I'll be watching the questions coming in and will do my best to get to as many as possible. At this time, I'd like to introduce our panelists. With us today are Matthew Revere, Deputy Director at Next Street, and Jennifer Neeson, Associate Attorney, Christopoulos Law Group. We're going to start today with Matthew Revere. Matthew, please take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Teresa. And thank you everyone for being here today. Good morning, everyone. I first and foremost want to thank everyone, not just for being here today, but what you're really doing here in your community. You know, food is culture. And with that culture, we define our neighborhoods. So I truly want to thank you for being here today and everything that you do. We're going to talk a little bit today about access to capital. And I know that that's a very big topic. It's something that we can't just solve today in 20 minutes, as each business is unique. But what I will ask you to do is meet with a one-on-one business advisor who can talk a little bit about it to meet your specific needs. Great. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is that capital challenges for restaurants are very, very specific. As you may know, restaurants, they have the highest outflow of cash, meaning the cash that you're paying to pay your bills, as well as the highest inflow of cash. That means credit, batching out, things of that nature. So with the highest cash flow and inflows, that means the capital is always moving in your business. It is much higher than other industries. And so you're going to always be having the cash coming into your account as almost as quickly as it's leaving your account and at the highest rates. Another thing to look at too is if we look at the next slide, the restaurant industry has the smallest window of buffer days. What this means is that if you look at all the industries and if you had to stop production or shut down the restaurant for a few days, you have the least amount of days of capital reserve. And so this provides a very unique challenges to the restaurant industry. And because of these two main issues, restaurants are usually one of the top tiers that people will reach out to for predatory lending practices. And so today we want to talk a little bit about how to avoid those predatory lending practices and really talking about what capital we can get that can be the cheapest as well as can continue your business. So if we move to the next slide, we're going to be talking about these three types of funding options for your business. loan, grant, and equity. Today, I'm mostly going to be focusing on the loan. This is something that you probably will be running into the most as a small business owner, and as well as sometimes the most predatory practices will be falling into this and ways to watch out for that. So some just quick pros about the loan. Obviously how you are filed, sometimes the interest payments can be tax deductible. The lender usually does not interfere with your business decisions. So if you take out that loan, usually the lender will not be interfering and you can run your business as you normally do. And then for the loan, there's such a very wide variety of product and terms. There are very short-term loans that may only last 6 months. There are line of credits, as well as loans that can go to 10 to 15 years. So there's a very wide variety of products that can meet your need as an entrepreneur. Again, some cons, a loan, you're gonna have to repay it. And the interest rates can be costly over time. When we look at our personal borrowing capabilities, we're very federally regulated as a person. However, when it comes to business capital, there's little to no federal regulations. So it does create a window for these online predatory practices where interest rates can reach over 30%. Another thing is that if the business unfortunately does fail, a lot of the times with loans, they do ask for a personal guarantee, which means that you will be on the hook for this, even if the business unfortunately does fall. The next one is grants. You know, before COVID, there wasn't many grant opportunities out there for small businesses. However, now that we are moving into the post-COVID world, there's many more grants and grant opportunities out there for small businesses. One, in fact, will be through the source that Teresa was talking about earlier. We will have one coming out this fall. So just something to keep your eye on. Grant, again, very big pros. You don't have to repay it. There's no repayment required. You take the capital, it's yours. There's usually there will be no usually impact to your business or business decisions, so you can run your business the same way. A few cons about the grant is that eligibility restrictions based on the grant. Not every grant is for everyone, so you have to understand if you qualify for this grant. It may have tax implications. It may register as income for your business, depending upon how you are filed. And there may be requirements how it's used. Sometimes you can just use it for general business purposes. Other times it may have to go to a piece of equipment or furniture or fixtures. Then finally, equity. This is the one you're probably gonna run the least into. However, if you are at the equity stage, I always say, please meet with a one-on-one advisor. And this is also a point where you do want to start looking at legal issues, meeting with a lawyer. The first positive about equity is that the people who are investing in your business, they can really bring these helpful expertise to you. They can bring and add to your business, as well as they can be flexible on the repayment. Maybe they're just buying some equity in your business, or they're giving you a loan that could be 1% to 2% over a 10-year period. So equity, you have a lot of those flexibilities. Again, a lot of cons is that usually your business has to be in a place of profitability and or growing, and to attract those investors. And finding those investors can be difficult. It's also, you want to make sure you find the investors that meet your needs, and because they're going to be taking a portion of your business and they're going to be taking something. And so they're going to be wanting to have more decision power within your business. And it can be more costly than a loan. They can be taking more of your business long-term that can do that. And again, this is a portion where if people are coming to talk to you about investing or becoming an investor, this is where you really want to lean on your legal team to just help and make sure that all those contracts are reviewed and that you're protected as a small business owner. Great. So let's focus a lot on the loan. What are some questions we need to think about before we take out a loan? First and foremost, we really want to think about the use of funds. Is it a good business decision to take a loan for my business at this point? Why am I borrowing the loan? Am I borrowing just to stay afloat? Or am I borrowing because I need to purchase a new piece of equipment to grow my business? What is the use of the funds we are using? And will borrowing drive that for us? The next question we want to think about is our payment amount. How much can we afford this loan that we're going to take over? Again, payment amounts, they can change over the terms. There are very short-term loans that can be only 6 months long. There can also be ones that go over 10 years. So we want to make sure that we can afford that payment amount on the repayment terms that we have, and making sure we understand our cash flow. There are many businesses, especially in the restaurant industry, that are seasonal. We all know that traditionally Q4 is our busy time where we're going to be having more capital. And in the winter months, it may be a slower period where our cash flow may be lessened. The cost. Can we afford the interest rate for this? Remember, the longer your term, the smaller your monthly payments. However, over the time, that's going to cost you more money because your interest rate is expensed over that same time. Timing to get the loan approved. How long will it get your loan approved? Many people think that a very quick loan approval process is a positive thing. However, are they really doing the due diligence to understand your business, or are they just burning and turning the loan to get you on the hook for a high interest rate? And you want to understand what your runway and what your time is to getting that loan and meeting with those people. Then the biggest one, and the biggest one you really want to focus on, is terms. Has the lender been transparent about the terms and the loan related fees? A lot of times, sometimes with these predatory lenders, they may say things like, we don't have an interest rate. Well, that may be true. They have that are built into the loan. And so with those fees, it can be upwards of 30 to 40%. So things you want to ask questions like is, what is the APY and APR on this loan? That will show you what the fees are built in as well. And the big one is, how easy is it to get someone on the phone to talk to? What is this relationship? And if it's hard, that may be a very big red flag for you and for your business. Great. So steps before taking a loan. The first thing you want to do is really check with your lender. If you don't have a trusted banker right now, I would say one of the things you could do is to start building that relationship. Don't just go to the banker, your trusted banker, if there's an emergency you need to borrow. It's really great to build that relationship with your banker so they can understand your business and where you're going. And if that capital ask comes, they already know you and your business. Now, I always say go to the bank first. Banks are very well regulated and they will have the best rates for you. However, if you don't qualify for a bank loan, the next best option for you would be to check out what we call a CDFI, or Community Development Financial Institution. These are nonprofit lenders. We have some very great ones here in the Chicago market, such as Allies for Community Business, that do nonprofit lending for you and for your business for people who don't qualify for the bank. They're very great resources out there. Again, the next thing is you want to determine how much you can apply for and calculate your requested loan amount. Big one is to understand what documents are needed, which we'll talk a little bit later on, to submit your application. Make sure you understand your cash flow and where this loan is going to be, especially with your current debt and your credit and where it's going to be placed. Finally, make sure you take that time to calculate repayment amounts, make a plan for how you'll spend and repay your loan. Great. So again, how much should you apply for? This is a question I always got first. And when someone came to me and said, well, what's the maximum amount I could borrow? That's kind of a red flag. And what that is saying to me is basically you don't have this money benchmarked. You don't know where this money is going to go. So a big thing is determine your loan purpose. How are you going to use these funds? So if you say, these are for working capital, okay. But if you say this loan is to take on 1 to 3 new staff members, which I believe can grow my business by 30%. Well, that's a much stronger case. And you want to make sure you can leverage this capital. Again, capital is expensive, so you want to make sure that this money and every single dollar is allocated for a purpose. So again, we may need new equipment, We may need to maintain staffing levels or working capital. Those are all things that we can take a look at. And you want to make sure you're very specific in your ask. Again, make a plan on how you're going to repay the loan. Many lenders require personal guarantee, even if you're filed as an LLC or S Corp. Most of the time, there will be a personal guarantee, which means you are personally liable for this debt. So you want to make sure that you allocate and make the plan to repay this loan. Financial documents. These are usually traditionally what documents that small business lenders are looking for. Each lender's application, of course, will be different, but what you really want to do, and especially let's say you're in a crunch and your freezer breaks, you don't want to be looking and trying to build these documents in those moments. So always make sure you have these documents ready in a folder, maybe at the bottom of the desk, just in case something happens. If you have tax returns, they usually ask for 1 or 2 years of those. They always ask for most recent profit and loss statement. And if you don't have those, again, please go back to the Cook County source. We will connect you with someone for one-on-one TA that can help you build these documents for you. Personal financial statement as well. Those are kind of just generally what documents are looking for. And then on the business side, they're always going to be asking for your articles of incorporation, bylaws, licenses. They want to make sure that those are all up to date, mortgage payments, and utility bills. So you want to make sure you have all of these kind of in a folder, just in case if something happens, you don't have to rebuild those. Then finally, quickly, I just want to talk quickly what lenders consider when they're approving your loan. Each lender obviously uses some different underwriting criteria when determining if you're eligible, but they traditionally follow what we call the 5 C's. The first one is credit, your personal credit. Almost everyone will be checking your personal credit at some point. Second is character, what your industry expertise is in this. Cash flow, is your business cash flow positive or cash flow negative? Can you repay that loan? Capital, are you going to be putting any money of your own into this project? Then finally, collateral. Is there anything that you can put up to collateralize this loan, such as a vehicle or a piece of equipment or even a home, what that may look like there? And the stronger you are in these 5 C's, let's say you have an excellent track record, robust industry experience, and excellent credit, that may lead to more of an approved loan versus someone who may not have that savings, who may be cash flow negative. That may lead you to more expensive capital as well. And so those are things that you really want to make sure you're strengthening in your business that you can move forward. I'll stop there. And I know we have Q&A at the end, and I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That was very informative. Next, we have Jennifer Neeson, Associate Attorney at Christopoulos Law Group. Jennifer, please take it away.
Thanks, Teresa. I will begin this presentation talking about Illinois retailers and licensing, and I thought it would be great to start well with a quick historical review of the 21st Amendment and how Illinois regulates alcohol today. The 21st Amendment, which repealed the 18th Amendment, was ratified in 1933. The decision to repeal the constitutional amendment at the time and still was unprecedented and came as a response to the crime and general ineffectiveness associated with Prohibition. Through Prohibition, had reduced alcoholism and drunkenness, but also created new sorts of problems like lawlessness and organized crime, including the black market for alcohol controlled by the mob. And organized crime members made so much money on liquor that they were able to bribe police forces. As a result of the Great Depression, there was an economic need for tax revenue and jobs, and also influenced desires to legalize the alcohol industry. So what is the meaning of the 21st Amendment? And Section 2 is the important one to note, and it bans the importation of alcohol in violation of state and territorial law. Therefore, states were provided with absolute control over alcoholic beverages, and many states remain dry long after ratification. The 21st Amendment, fun fact, makes beverage alcohol industry the only industry in which constitutional amendment regulates. As a result, the Illinois General Assembly passed the Illinois Liquor Control Act in 1934, and the act imposed upon the industry a three-tier distribution scheme where manufacturers, importers, and retailers are generally only authorized to sell to distributors, which in turn are only authorized to sell to retail vendors. The purpose of the three-tier system is, next slide, thank you. The purpose of the three-tier system is to prevent vertical integration, achieve temperance, and to ensure the quality of product, and to remain an orderly marketplace so there isn't an overabundance of alcohol in the market. The legislature believed that the prohibition scheme allowed a non-local manufacturers to exercise control of the local market with no ties to local market other than achieve profit. By extending credit and financial incentives to retailers, manufacturers were able to exclude competition, gain more control over the market. Prior to the three-tier scheme, large manufacturers owned local taverns and saloons, and they were able to run as an oligopoly. The Illinois Liquor Control Act is administered by the Illinois Liquor Control Commission, which addresses all aspects of value, tied house, and licensure issues. The act provides for licensure of importers, breweries, distilleries, wholesalers, and several categories of retailers. The Illinois Liquor Control Act, I'm sorry, next slide. In turn, as I said, the Illinois Liquor Control Act gives the local jurisdictions control. The act provides that the mayor of each municipality is the local liquor control commissioner granted with the power to license retailers. In turn, local commissioners can issue licenses, issue fines, suspend, and also revoke licenses. Consequently, retailers require not only licensure from state commission, but also from the local commission. In general, these are the key steps a retailer generally needs in Illinois to obtain a liquor license in every local jurisdiction. The key steps are understanding your zoning requirements, going through receiving either community or alderman approval, the general applications requirements for each jurisdiction, inspection requirements, and also your state retailer licensing requirements. So we generally recommend retailers begin, you can keep that previous slide. So just to first talk about what retailers need to do, we generally recommend beginning your licensing process no later than 6 months before your goal opening date. The sooner the better, as each of these sections can have delays and can hold up your licensure and prevent you from opening. So the first is the zoning. When an Illinois retailer wishes to obtain a liquor license in any Illinois local jurisdiction, the first step is to review the zoning requirements for that proposed location. Every local jurisdiction is divided into distinct districts that reflect the diversity of the business and neighborhood, which outlines which types of business activities are permitted. The zoning department in the city of Chicago, for example, must approve an initial zoning review prior to any licensed applicant proceeding with their application. We advise clients to conduct an initial zoning review prior to signing a lease or acquiring a business in order to determine if their goals can be met within that particular space or establishment that they're wanting to use. In addition, if a licensee is purchasing an existing business rather than starting a new business, we recommend submitting a FOIA request as part of the diligence period in the transaction to review the history of the citations or violations within that from that current licensee. It could impact your future licensure. The second, to address it, in addition to zoning approval, prior to acquiring an establishment or obtaining a lease, we recommend you reach out to your alderman or your community and And that can either be through submitting a written information, attending community meetings to introduce your business venture, or possibly to meet with the alderman prior to submitting any form of application. If there are any questions or you do not have the support of the community, you could face some obstacles as you move forward with your application. It's important that your community approves your business or supports your business. In general, as I said, Illinois is a dual jurisdiction state with regard to retail liquor licenses. This means that both the state and the local municipality have the authority to regulate your retail license. Therefore, in general, most Illinois municipalities require license applications to, you must obtain your local license prior to your state license. In order to do so, the general requirements for those applications include corporate documentation about your licensed entity, a lease, a proof of BASSET certification for all of your employees, on-site manager information, and a site and a floor plan. The most pertinent issue, unbeknownst to retailers, is that additional financial disclosures as well as ownership disclosures are required. Not only does the state act require that owners with a 5% or more ownership interest be disclosed on a state liquor license, but most Illinois jurisdictions require officers, owners with 5% or more interest, and on-site managers to undergo a vetting process, which includes submitting your photo ID, personal information, and undergoing a background check. The city of Chicago and some of the local municipalities go one step further and require not only direct owners, but indirect owners who meet that 5% threshold to be subject to these same vetting requirements. It's important to look at your business and look at the ownership structure to determine who will be vetted. Especially if you think that maybe you've had a business and you make a holding company, and within that holding company, you think that you may not be subject to being fingerprinted because you're protected by the corporate veil. It's not the case in these jurisdictions, and they can require you to disclose every single entity owner to submit with the liquor license application. In addition, the financial disclosures can be an issue that a retailer doesn't anticipate. In Chicago, for instance, investors who submit a 10% or more capital contribution to the business, even if they don't have an ownership interest, they still are required to be vetted, and those financials may be required to be submitted with the liquor license application. So if you are looking for investors, or maybe you have even a relative that wants to chip in on the business venture, but they don't want to have any ownership, they too can be subject to be fingerprinted and be on the liquor license. In addition to that, there are inspection requirements upon submitting any license application. Most jurisdictions require establishments to undergo a building, fire, and health inspection, in addition to other possible inspections required by that particular jurisdiction. Generally, inspection approvals are required for a license to issue. Therefore, it's incumbent for the retailer to work with counsel and the contractor to avoid delays. And then lastly, you'll need your state liquor license. You need to submit a state liquor license application, and that license is the license that you will provide to your distributors in order to order product. Next slide. As you can see in Chicago, for instance, there are many different types of liquor license. It's important for the retailer to understand which liquor license or licenses it should apply for based on their goals for that particular establishment, and work with the city or council to further understand their code requirements for each. As it is summer season, I wanted to focus on the remainder of the presentation on outdoor dining permits and requirements in Chicago specifically, as there are a few different types of licenses and permits that may be required for your outdoor dining area. The three that I'm going to focus on are outdoor patio liquor license, the sidewalk cafe permit, and your expanded outdoor dining permit. The first is the outdoor patio license. This is a liquor license application that must be submitted to the Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Department. All applicants must have a tavern or consumption incidental activity license to apply. Some key notes about this license is it must be adjacent to your property, and it must be fully bounded by a barrier, and no music can be played. It's an often question amongst our clients. No music can be played or performed, and there can be no speakers on the patio. Zoning approval and inspections are required in addition to community and alderman support. It's a similar, it's a same type of liquor license application you would apply for any other type of liquor application in Chicago. The outdoor, this is a two-year term license. The next is the City of Chicago Sidewalk Cafe permit. A sidewalk cafe permit is required when the outdoor dining area is adjacent to the licensed establishment, but is located on the public way, which is the city sidewalk. So the outdoor patio license I failed to mention, that is, you apply for that when you are applying for outdoor dining on your private property. And that's the difference between these two. A sidewalk cafe permit requires you to submit an application with the Public Way Use Department. The timeline for these permits have varied, but recently the permit has been approved within 5 to 10 business days. All applicants must hold a valid retail food establishment license in order to apply for the sidewalk cafe permit. And the outdoor dining area, similar to the outdoor patio license, must be bounded by a barrier, but as it is on the sidewalk, it must maintain a 6-foot clearance on the pedestrian's walkway. The code does not specify what type of barrier needs to be used. However, your alderman may have additional insight of what types of barriers they do require in their ward. So it's best to have a conversation with your alderman prior to submitting this permit. The outdoor dining area, in addition to having the 6-foot clearance, it must have seating and must be ADA accessible. And as these permits are now year-round, you have to have heaters which comply with the fire code during the winter time, if you choose to have them. A common misconception for a lot of retailers for these sidewalk cafe permits is that BYOB is not permitted on the outdoor dining area, and you can receive a citation if you are operating as such. In light of COVID, the city significantly reduced the permit fee by 75%. It's a 1-year term permit, and the fee was initially $600 at minimum and is now reduced to $150, but it depends on the size of your sidewalk. The city, the next one is in response to COVID, the city of Chicago created the expanded outdoor patio dining permit for temporary outdoor service of bars and restaurants on the public way or on their private properties such as parking lots. The expanded outdoor dining permit requires retailers to either have a valid retail food establishment, tavern, or consumption on premise incidental activity liquor license to temporarily expand their operations into the public way or other private property. The expanded outdoor dining area is limited to 50 persons or a max occupancy stated on that permit. Bars that plan to only serve liquor and do not have a retail food license, however, can expand on the sidewalk in front of or adjacent to their establishment if they have a partner establishment with a retail food license. To expand the outdoor patio area onto the street, you must also obtain a street closure. A chamber of commerce, special service agencies, business associations, or at least 3 or more establishments on that same block may apply for the street closure. To obtain the street closure, at least 50% of participating establishments must serve food. A 14-foot fire lane must be maintained at all times. Food and drinks must be prepared inside the establishment and served on the outdoor patio. There are no outdoor bars or kitchens allowed, and you cannot use the patio for a bar crawl or a festival type area, you must have tables and you must have seats on these types on the street closure area, dining areas. Then the retailer is also responsible to obtain their own type 3 barricades. To expand in your own private parking lot, the parking lots do not have to be adjacent to the establishment, but they have to provide a safe area for staff and patrons to traverse from the establishment to the proposed dining area. A safety and security plan will be required to operate under these conditions. All expanded outdoor dining must close by 11 p.m. and there is no application fee for the outdoor dining permit. However, if you do plan to serve alcohol, you may be subject to temporary liquor permit fee, which is $150. The term for this permit is 180 days, and the extended outdoor dining is subject to expire on December 31st, 2022. We are not aware at this time if the city is planning to extend this permit into 2023. Just a quick 2022 update that is not indicated on the slide. Recently, the ILCC announced, you can go forward. Thanks. A quick 2022 update that's not indicated on a slide. Recently, the ILCC announced that 1A retailer liquor licensees, their renewal fees will be waived for the 2022-2023 year. The fee waiver applies only to 1A state retailer licensees where their licenses expire after July 1st of this year and on or before June 30th of 2023. If you qualify for the fee waiver, you must still file your renewal application on your MyTax account. And if you do hold a 1B or any other type of retailer license, you must still also renew, and you won't have a fee waiver for those. I think that's it, and open for questions as well.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So we have some questions coming in. Let's go ahead and get started with the Q&A. So the first question is for Jennifer. It says, do you need to have an attorney to apply for a liquor license, or can you do it alone?
You are not required to have an attorney for a liquor license. We advise that you do, based on the issues that I presented with zoning and that can happen in your application and understanding the process, but you're not required to.
Thanks, Jennifer. This question is for Matthew. What are some useful tips on repaying your loans in a timely manner?
Yeah, so when you're repaying your loan, again, it goes to building that plan, what you're going to be doing to making those payment plans, understanding your cash flow cycles and your downtimes, and being prepared to pay and have that capital ready to make sure you do that. So it's all about building that plan early on to know what the repayment looks like. I also know I answered some questions during the chat that we can go through too as well.
Great, thank you, Matthew. Jennifer, what is the average turnaround time to receive a sidewalk permit? I think you mentioned this during the presentation, but maybe you can touch on it again briefly.
The sidewalk cafe permit is 5 to 10 business days. The outdoor dining permit, the liquor license on your private property, is subject to a 35-60-day review deadline, review period by the city. And we usually anticipate that takes a few months, if not, I would say 4 to 6 months in order to obtain it, as we do apply for it generally with your other liquor license application.
Thank you, Jennifer. Matthew, when it comes to accessing funding, how are restaurants different than other industries?
Yeah, so I'll speak about the positives and negatives there. So positives for restaurants is that usually the loans can be much more collateralized because you have a lot of equipment. So these are things when it comes to loans we can collateralize, such as ovens, mixers, and whatnot. as well as it is an industry where people understand that capital will always be a concern. And so that there are specific lending products out there for restaurants, such as lines of credits, things of that nature. Some ways that it is different and possibly on a negative side is that cash flow will always be tough for a business. As you all know, as soon as the money comes in, it's usually leaving. And so managing that cash flow will absolutely be pivotal for you to get those loans.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Jennifer, when it comes to, what is the biggest hurdle that restaurants face when accessing the proper licenses and permits that they need?
I think it's mostly timing and understanding, taking the initial approach of prior to when you're initially looking at your business and going through your lease negotiations, really understanding that jurisdiction's timelines, whether you have to attend hearings, what your zoning approval requirement and timeline is. If you have any obstacles, those could cause delays, and your inspection requirements, all of those things, they do impact your license issuance timeline. It can impact your goal opening date. So especially when you're working with a contractor and understanding your construction times as well, we often get involved and talk with the contractors and understand that timeline. And we try our best to get to your goal opening date, but we need to understand that the jurisdiction's timeframes first, and then what type of obstacles we may face, whether it be within the license application itself causing delays, or whether it's maybe with a zoning issue, or maybe there's something additional rather than that is needed in order to accomplish those proposed uses within that particular area.
So much. Matthew, what if I have bad credit but desperately need a loan? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah. So let's say you don't qualify for bank financing right now. The next step I would say is to contact a local CDFI. Again, maybe perhaps one here, Allies for Community Business. They sometimes will take credit scores incredibly low, sometimes 500 levels. And there's a lot of other factors that they look at other than just credit. Now, let's say that you can't get a loan from a CDFI, then you really want to look at possibly a crowdsourcing situation. There's one called kiva.org that you can take a look at. These are smaller loan amounts, but these are some situations. And then, you do want to talk to banks about possibly credit rebuilder loans. These are small loans that they can give you to help you rebuild your credit. And the good thing about credit is credit's very flexible. Out of all the C's, this is the one that you can probably repair the most. It just takes a little bit of time to do that, but you can get there for sure.
Thank you, Matthew. Jennifer, are there any special liquor licensing requirements for rooftop event spaces?
Yes, an outdoor, well, first of all, the zoning, your zoning has to approve those types of spaces. So if you review it, there's a difference between gradient and rooftop for being permitted within that space. So the initial zoning review would be required. It needs to be within your lease and authorized by your landlord, and it would require an outdoor patio license as it's on the private property.
Thanks, Jennifer. Matthew, for you, how do we find these investors? Is there a list of them somewhere?
Yeah, so with investors, a great place to stay is called angel investors. They are people who they kind of are in the space where they're more vetted investors and do it more out of a philanthropic way to look at it. So that's a way to start. But when it comes to investors, again, be very, very careful. There are some sharks out there that can potentially damage your business. And if you start moving into the investment world, again, make sure you have a team or a lawyer with you that can review everything that goes into that agreement.
Just to add to Matthew's comment, and it often overlooked when looking at investors, Similar to, for instance, the SEC, you are a regulated business, and for alcohol, and a questionnaire to your investors is wise. Not only should you make your investors aware that they may be required to disclose financials and be fingerprinted and placed on a liquor license, depending on how much their capital they are contributing, but they also might have ownership in other tiers of the industry. They may have an ownership interest in a winery or a beer or spirits manufacturer, or be part of a distribution company. All of those can create what are known as tied house violations. And there's something that is a violation for the retail tier. So we often see that as an overlooked thing by a retailer.
Really great information from both of you. Thank you. Jennifer, do you have any advice for tracking potential changes to licensing and other regulations related to the restaurant industry?
Well, one of the recommendations that we have in order to be notified, definitely using the IRA, they are following up and providing you with a full resource of the updates. In addition to that, the Illinois Liquor Control Commission has updates that you can sign up for on an email basis, as well as the Department of Business Affairs with the City of Chicago. They host webinars, a few a month, and they're very helpful and informative. So you can always keep up to date with that, as well as receive notifications from your alderman or your community. Generally, they have monthly reviews. And lastly, a good idea would be to, if you are in the City of Chicago, for instance, joining CAPS meetings with CPD. Those are either quarterly or monthly meetings that you can discuss and hear ongoing issues and work with CPD to find resolutions and learn more about what's going on in your community and what's being addressed and how.
And thank you so much. Matthew, what would make me pick CDFI over a regular loan? Is this even advisable?
No, it's not advisable. First, you want to start with your bank financing. Banks will give you the best rates, and they're federally regulated. Once you work with the bank and there may be an issue or two, that's what I would explore, working with the CDFI.
Great. Jennifer, what is the most common fine that restaurants face when it comes to permitting and licensing of alcohol sales?
State violations include, for instance, tavern and liquor stores often get fines for purchasing alcohol from retailers and not from their distributor. Their inspectors will cite retailers for signages and licenses not being posted, invalid licensure, failing to renew your license, or having valid insurance. From a local standpoint, again, expired insurance, employees aren't Bassett certified, not following a plan of operation if it's required, having outdoor dining or other items on your public way, including planters, or having an awning installed without a public way use permit, speakers on the sidewalk cafe or playing music on that patio, and service to minors.
Matthew, what is the average term of loans to restaurateurs? 5, 10 years?
Yeah, so it depends upon the lender. The lender will always set the term, and always will be based on what they feel is correct. Typically, if you're getting bank financing, if the loan's under 100,000, it's about a 5-year term, and anything above that's probably about a 10-year term. But again, it'll differ. There's also, again, we speak about the predatory lending practices. There are people who will give you a $100,000 loan with a 1-year term that has the 30% APR. So again, you want to make sure when you're going through the paperwork of your term and loan agreements, read everything, understand your monthly payments, and understand that you can afford those.
Great. And Matthew, someone asked, do you have any other information about the grant coming this fall?
Yeah. So definitely more to come. Since you've been on this webinar, you will be on the email list once we announce. So we're going to put many announcements out there. Right now, we're actually going through the process and kind of what the underwriting criteria for this grant will be. But definitely more to come for there. We'll definitely be sending out more information soon about this.
Okay, great. And then if you can each just, take a minute or so and give Jennifer, we'll start with you. What is your best advice that you can give restaurateurs today, right now, about accessing, permits and licensing?
I think that it would be to definitely be in communication with the city and your community and your aldermen. When looking at a business, I think those are very important to introduce yourself and really understand what the community is maybe looking for, and ensuring that your restaurant or your bar is will be a great aspect for the community. I think that's always important, to stay in contact with the community as well and address their concerns as much as you can. Happy neighbors means happy business.
Yeah, I think my advice would be prepare for the storm now. When you're looking to access capital in that emergency situation, it's going to be much more tougher if you're not prepared for it previously. So that means building those relationships with your bankers, talking with these trusted business advisors that you can get through the Cook County Small Business Source. So when you either do want to ask for that capital to grow your business, everything is in place and you can get the best capital possible, or in those emergency situations, everything is already set up for you.
Thank you both so much for sharing your expertise today. It looks like those are all of the questions, so I'll just wrap up our time here. I would like to thank you all for attending and thank our panelists once again, Matthew Revere with Next Street and Jennifer Neeson at Christopoulos Law Group. I'd also like to thank the Cook County Small Business Source for their continued efforts to provide information, resources, business advising to small businesses to help with their recovery. Following the conclusion of this webinar, attendees will receive an email with links to the webinar recording as well as the presentation. And thank you all for attending and have a great day.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.